So in this video, we're going to back up a bit. And rather than thinking about arguments, we're going to focus on individual sentences and thinking about the way that sentences might be put together. Because one important observation, which is going to be connected to what we're going to say about form, is that sometimes sentences are put together out of other sentences. So for instance, let's just take a simple sentence involving and. Joey is an actor. And Ross is a professor, say. That's all one big sentence. But of course, if we took away the and, then the other two parts, they could stand by themselves as sentences. There are things that you can say individually. So that's a sentence, and that's a sentence. And you can put them together using this word and to make a bigger sentence. So that's pretty obvious. Let's just see another example of it. So let's say, if Rachel made dessert, let's say she brought the meat trifle. Okay, let's put it down. Again, this sentence is made out of other sentences. This is by itself as a sentence. You could say it individually. Say something different. You could say it individually. And again, this is a sentence. It stands by itself. You could just assert that she brought the meat trifle. So like before, we have this expression, if then, which when we put it together with other sentences can make a bigger sentence. So I want to talk about these words first of all. And, if then, another one is or, another one is not. All of these words combine with sentences to make bigger sentences. They're what we're going to call examples of connectives, sentence connectives. So a connective is a word that combines with one or more sentences to make a sentence. So let me write down that definition of a connective. So like say DF, remember DF is my abbreviation for definition. Definition of a connective. It's a word or phrase that combines with one or more sentences to make a new sentence. We go back to each of these examples, we can see that's what happens. And combines with two sentences, makes a new sentence, a bigger sentence. Same with if then. Obviously, you can see the same happens with or. Not technically is a connective as well. So if I say I can add not to a sentence, then I get a new sentence. So it's a sentence, so it's a connective. This idea of a connective is really important. It's a really important kind of word. And we're going to see it and think about lots of different connectives over the course of this class. Okay, so with that definition of a connective, we can now start thinking about what does it mean for a sentence to be simple, or what does it mean for a sentence to be complex? So let's compare two sentences. So let's keep our old sentence involving and let's just have a sentence like, Monica is cooking. Okay, so there's an important kind of difference between these sentences, and we can describe it in two different ways. If we focus with this sentence, we can see that one way in which this sentence is simple is that it doesn't contain any other sentences as parts. There's just the one sentence. Any other part, that wouldn't be a sentence. Is cooking is not a sentence. You can't just say is cooking, or you can't just say Monica, or you can't just say is. You have to put the words together before you get a sentence. So no sentences as parts. That's not to say it doesn't have parts. It does have parts. It's made out of words, but none of the parts are sentences. That's obviously different here. With this sentence, it does have some sentences as parts, some other sentences. This is a part and this is a part. So this test of whether or not you have sentences as part, this is basically what we're going to mean by saying a sentence is either atomic or simple or complex. So we're saying that when you have no sentences as parts, then you're an atomic sentence. Or we'll sometimes say a simple sentence. Be an atomic sentence or a simple sentence, that's to have no sentences as parts. To be a complex sentence is to have other sentences as parts. So the definition of a complex sentence is you have other sentences as parts. I'll DF to show that these are our definitions. Those are one way of defining these. But another way of defining what it means to be simple or complex, or atomic or complex, is to think about connectives. Because whether something is simple or complex really is the same question as whether something has connectives. Because remember, if you have a connective, there have to be other sentences which it's connecting with to make a bigger sentence. So if you see a connective in a sentence, and, you know it has two other sentences, at least two other sentences as parts, if it's and. If it's or, you know it has two other sentences as parts. If it's if then, you know it has two other sentences as parts. And if it's not, you know it has one sentence as a part. So that's another way of thinking about what it is for a sentence to be complex. So our second definition, this is even kind of simpler. It just contains at least one connective. Because if you've got a connective, you've got to have other sentences as parts that the connective combines with. And of course, if that's the way we want to think about being complex, then being atomic is having no connectives. Because if you have no connectives, then that's a guarantee that you don't have any other sentences to combine with parts. So an atomic sentence is just one with no connectives. So those are two different ways of thinking about the same idea. Atomic sentences have no sentences as parts. Complex sentences do have sentences as parts. Or to say the same thing, atomic sentences contain no connectives. Complex sentences do contain connectives. They have to contain at least one connective. So now that we have these ideas of connectives, of atomic sentences or simple sentences, and complex sentences, in the next video, we're going to put these together and use them as a way of thinking about the form of arguments.